Okay.
Prochaine présentation.
For the next presentation,
Vous êtes peut-être déjà au courant.
you might already know that there were some developments in the Neuchâtel ecosystem. The Banque Cantonale made headlines, and we thought that this year might be a good year to take stock of how this ecosystem developed in the canton. It is a victim of its success, so to speak. And so this is also an opportunity for those who are not from Neuchâtel to discover everything that we've built here, and for Neuchâtel people to start a conversation together and try to see how the Bitcoin ecosystem could look like in Neuchâtel over the next few years. And for that, I will give the floor to Nicolas Vradis and to Sedat Adiyaman.
Non, désolé, j'ai toujours du mal pour ton... Enfin, tu le diras très bien.
Apologies for the pronunciation. From the co-working person
qui vont vous présenter un petit peu
who will present this ecosystem and how it was developed. We will hear this from Nicolas, and we will explore some avenues for the future with Sedat.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Good morning, everyone.
Bien remis de la soirée d'hier.
Have you well recovered from yesterday evening?
C'est des petits oui, hein.
Small voices.
Bien, je vais vous faire une petite
rétrospective
en fait de l'écosystème neuchâtelois.
Do a bit of a retrospective of the Neuchâtel ecosystem. I will tell you about what happened over the past 10 years. My name is Nicolas Vradis. I work as a business manager at the NICO, the Department of the Economy of the Canton of Neuchâtel. I help foreign businesses set up in Neuchâtel. I have a technical background as an engineer, and then I also did an EMBA.
Sous l'impulsion de certains
under
l'écosystème, j'ai fait encore le master en digital currency.
And with the support of partners, I also did a master in digital currency at the Nicolas University. The technical aspects were not too complex, but I learned a lot about the banking sector. And when we see how it works at the international level, it can be a bit scary. So I'm happy to be here and to be learning about all this. I was told that I am a geek at the service of the economy. I am kind of a jack of all trades, interested in many things, maybe interested in too many things sometimes, and this is why from on the side of the state we wanted to go in that direction. One of the Bitcoin paradigms has been from the start that it's very difficult to attract people, make them want to understand how it works. People will always pay attention to the value that it has. When you talk with people in your family, they often ask how much, what's the price, but few people are really interested in the technology. So if there are people who are interested in this here, well done, this is already a first step. There are many interesting people here, so I would like to encourage you to discuss with those persons because you can learn a lot. In 2014, what happened was what I call the Great Planetary Alignment. A geek arrived at the Department of the Economy in 2013, and suddenly Alexis, and I believe Diane as well, arrived in the offices saying, we have some issues, we created a business and we'd like to open a bank account. And I remember that we went to a major Swiss bank, the customer service was very open, very enthusiastic. We had an appointment the week after. Alexis was on the train, and then I received an email from the bank saying that I put in all the information in the system, but Zurich called and said nothing will happen. So we were a bit kind of in a pickle, and I'm the type of people who do not stop when I want to do something. I try to find solutions. So there was a need. There were people at Les Avocats, a law firm, who had started working on regulation around Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. and distributed ledger technologies, DLTs. At the Department of the Economy, I understood the technical aspect. I knew how it worked. We had a head of the department, kind of an economy minister, who understood that this was not magic money, that there was really this proof of work. We had discussed those aspects with him, and he also wanted to say, or he wanted to support the idea that if something is not banned in Switzerland, you have the right to do it. So in Switzerland, there is the legislation, and if this is not enshrined in the legislation, you can do it up until the time when there is regulation. So he said, let's go and discuss with the Banque Cantonale, so the cantonal bank, and kindly told the cantonal bank to allow BT to open its current account. So even though there were fears, the legislation, the FINMA, were being observed, respected. So that helped us move forward. And all those actors opened the doors and made all of this possible.
Un petit récapitulatif des grands moments, je vais dire.
A summary of the highlights in February 2014, the arrival of BT with the first discussions.
Je l'ai mis exprès parce que c'était un truc. Sachez qu'en
I included this because, well, in 2016, the CFF, so the railway company in Switzerland, included in their terminals the possibility of charging a Bitcoin wallet. But 2 years before, we were discussing this because we thought about distributing terminals in Switzerland, but after a few years we thought, if I can charge my phone on a CFF terminal, why couldn't I do the same with a Bitcoin wallet? But unfortunately, the CFF said that, well, we'll do this ourselves. Maybe we were a bit too kind, too naive back then. And some mistakes were made on the part of the CFF. But since 2016, Switzerland were the country with the largest amount of ATMs where you could buy Bitcoin. You have one in each station, and we have many stations in Switzerland. In 2017 and 2018, with the help of the commercial register, during my EMBA, I learned that in Switzerland you can create company with in-kind contributions. So we went to the commercial register and we had a discussion, and I think this is something of a strength in Neuchâtel. We want to do things correctly. Can we go there? It's not forbidden. Let's try, and we make sure that there is no way we can be accused of having done anything that can be sentenced somehow. So it's possible to not use banking contributions. So we worked with Bitcoin first and then Ether, and so we opened an avenue. And we did things correctly, and we saw that in other cantons sometimes things are done a bit randomly with NFTs, but we're trying to show the way and to do things properly in Neuchâtel. In 2020, the Neuchâtel University and its law department, the LexTech Institute, was created, and academic research was carried out on the cryptocurrency universe, especially DAOs and smart contracts. The management school, the HESSO, so University of Applied Sciences in Switzerland, started creating courses for EMBAs, and more specifically courses on how to understand the blockchain and cryptocurrencies, always with the very Neuchâtel idea to help people understand how Bitcoin works before moving on to other things. There are many people who get into the universe from other channels, and then their perspective is just wrong. In 2023, the Neuchâtel Canton joined the Swiss Blockchain Federation because it's a federation that lobbies a lot in Bern on the regulation
nos élus
that
au
really
niveau de la Confédération à
pushes
pousser pour
our
avancer sur cette
elected
réglementation-là.
officials
Donc
to
ça, c'est
make
un
those
grand pas aussi.
regulations
Et
progress. So this
vous
is
le verrez
also a
tout à
big
l'heure,
step.
donc,
And as you will
typiquement,
see
d'ici
later,
2025,
by
2025,
2025,
on aura
middle of
l'ouverture du centre
2025,
CBN.
the CBN Center will be opened, and Sedat will tell you more about this.
Neuchâtel, c'est un écosystème
Neuchâtel
qui se veut
is an ecosystem that aims to be resilient, that aims to be sustainable.
ces dernières années.
It developed a
On a
lot
énormément
over the past few years.
typologies de
We
sociétés,
have many types of
principalement du
companies,
développement d'infrastructures blockchain,
mainly on the development of blockchain infrastructure, companies that develop services and products related to these technologies, stockbrokers who also caused a bit of a stir, who have been causing a bit of a stir since the beginning of the year because there have been issues with volume. So if banking institutions don't optimize internal processes, it becomes quite difficult.
Services financiers, OTC,
Financial services, over-the-counter trading, everything that's related to securing blockchain infrastructure. That's what I call it. In the media, we hear mining, but miners' work is to secure the infrastructure. It's to make sure that it's work over time, and after each block, it's more difficult to change the previous blocks. There are also media companies, YouTube channels.
Développement de jeux de blockchain, là aussi.
Development of blockchain games, sometimes good things, sometimes less good things, some interesting projects as well that could allow some things that we will maybe see in a few years when they're released. Creation of NFT collections. NFTs for many people are just pictures, but I'm interested in the actual features and what you can do with those on different platforms. And then strategic services, not to forget those. This is also very important. It works with people who are in touch with the real world. Lawyers, accountants, fiduciaries, banks.
Voilà un petit aperçu des sociétés.
Here is an overview of the companies that are included. We have about 90 companies that are working in this field, closely or more remotely.
Et des partenaires.
As well as partners, local partners, who also are somehow connected to the field. The CSCM, the University Microcity, which is an incubator for industries. Neuchâtel has a 300-year-old history of watchmaking, so some projects could also benefit from this infrastructure. I talked about lawyers, the BCN, and Coworking Neuchâtel, which ended up being flooded with people in the area looking for offices, maybe just a closed office or just one seat in an open space. And since those people are working all together, they can also progress together.
Petit placement de produit.
A bit of an ad.
Le Canton de Neuchâtel a mis en place
the Neuchâtel Canton, with its Department of the Economy, created the Industrial Smart Map. This is something that we do with a local partner. They developed an AI which will take the commercial register, take the name of all companies, all the addresses, and then research information on these companies on the whole of the internet to try and categorize those companies. It's very interesting. For blockchain today, you don't have much, but there's more and more. So if there's any feedback from people who have their companies in a canton and don't find them on this map, maybe they can reference themselves better, or maybe they can just contact us so that we can try to support the AI so that they can be included. It's used in many areas, but if you are looking for some specific skills, industrial skills in the canton, this can be useful.
L'écosystème, donc on a mis en place ces dernières années.
Over the past few years, we've been doing it from the start. But we implemented the lending process with the economy services. When there is a project, we have to filter out the projects. There are many people who have good ideas, who want to maybe set up a scam and then leave. But sometimes there are people who end up scamming without doing it knowingly. So we use a filter, be it a legal filter or a technical filter, just to try and help the company establish itself properly. We prefer taking the time, because usually projects that are done a bit too quickly don't really last. So we are here for sustainability. So we put those businesses through filters with creation and then operational start. Sometimes there are issues with permits for people who are coming to work here. And then after it, there is continuous monitoring. We meet people, we answer any requests that there may be. The more businesses, the more requests. The ecosystem meets up every Thursday evening, and we organize those beer-to-beer sessions, and that's a moment when people can ask questions and they can answer each other. I'm not the only one answering questions. Perspectives for the Canton. We have to continue optimizing the framework conditions, which is not easy because the regulation is changing. We can also see what's happening at the European level. There are also many fears of some actors saying that it's complicated for them, considering the FINMA. FINMA is kind of the AMF in France. It's the Swiss financial market supervisory authority. So we try to continue to make sure that it works and that it's sustainable for people in the field, especially in the Canton of Neuchâtel. And we also want to support other industries in their transition. There were some announcement effects, so to speak, with the big watchmakers saying, we have developed an NFT collections. They have access to all the skills here, and then they go look for companies from the outside to do just what they want. So it creates a short buzz and then it dies, because there's no real reflection about how to make this sustainable. It's just marketing. The marketing departments want to create a small buzz. So if you want to do something in this area, feel free to contact people in the ecosystem to brainstorm on everything you can do with those technologies, and to not just have a buzz. We are really trying to build stars here. Sustainable ones. And we'll talk about BCN. A bit of a feedback now. It was important for me to mention this because we've heard a bit about those areas yesterday. In 10 years, I realized that being right too early is socially unacceptable. I think many of you are in this situation. It's difficult to surround yourself with people who will say, what you're doing is good. Maybe we could do this way. But it takes time. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. You have to hold on. In this ecosystem, we are lucky to have a lot of mutual support. We can share our experiences. But this is something that people experience. And secondly, they did not know it was impossible, so they did it. Usually when you have a new project, when you have a new idea, when you want to push something, very often you are limited by the limit of the person in front of you. I do not have a limit, but the other person will say, well, there's this, there's that, and this will be a burden because people come up to you with problems rather than with solutions. So surround yourself with people who will support you, who will tell you this is great, people with whom you can brainstorm. My motto is 1 + 1 = 3. If you discuss with people and they support you, then ideas can be brought higher. They're stepping out of your comfort zone. Most of the people I met stop in the red area. It's scary to jump out of a plane with a parachute, of course. It's difficult. It's scary to deep dive. I did some of that. I like extreme sports, and many people stop. But once you've stepped out of the Mach 1 area, you will start learning. And then you will start evolving, you will start growing, and you will realize, I can do this, I didn't think this was possible.
Donc, allez-y.
So it's about perseverance. Step out of your comfort zone, because here,
Compliqué de passer de l'idée
again,
au produit,
it's difficult
au désert.
to
Mais une
go
fois que
from
vous
the
avez
idea
vous êtes tombé sur le
to
oasis, vous pouvez vous
the
abreuver,
actual
regarder derrière vous,
thing.
et puis vous vous rendez compte du chemin que vous avez parcouru. Donc faites-le.
Because once you've moved on, you can look back and see
Je tiens aussi
all
à
the
remercier
path that
tous
you've
les acteurs
all
de
the path
l'écosystème.
that you've made.
du
I would
Canton
like to
Neuchâtel,
thank also
aussi
all the
tous
actors
ceux
of
des
the
autres
Neuchâtel
cantons.
ecosystem and
Discussion, hein,
those
sur
of
Suisse,
other cantons as well.
26 cantons, 26
In Switzerland, you know, there are 26 cantons, 26
C'est un peu comme l'Europe, mais ça
mentalities,
fonctionne.
4 national languages. It's a bit like Europe, but it works.
Et en fait, tout le monde veut briller un peu plus que
Everyone
l'autre,
wants to
mais,
shine a bit brighter
on
than
arrive quand même à
the other,
discuter, à
but we are still
échanger,
able
à
to
de temps en
have
temps donner des bonnes
conversations,
pratiques,
sometimes
faire
share
des
good
fois la bouée de
practices,
sauvetage pour certains.
sometimes
Mais, tiens, je
support
tiens à vous
others
remercier
that
parce
are
que
in a
c'est grâce à
pickle.
vous,
So I would like to
grâce
thank
à
you.
tout le travail que vous
And
faites,
it's thanks
qu'on parle
thanks
de
to
Neuchâtel.
all the work that you're
Comme
doing
disait
that
l'ancien chef de département à
Neuchâtel
on n'est pas
is
des speakers,
being talked
sinon j'en ai
about.
beaucoup.
In Neuchâtel, we are makers,
Ça
we're
qu'on
not
fait les
speakers,
choses.
even
On
though
va
I speak a
annoncer
lot.
les
So we
choses.
do
Oh,
things.
Michael,
We
il y a tout ça à Neuch, on ne
won't
savait pas.
announce
Parce
things.
qu'en fait,
Sometimes
les gens
people
font pas
realize
trop,
that there's a lot
faire le
happening in
speaker,
Neuchâtel
parce
and
que
they
des fois,
didn't
peut-être,
know.
ils pourraient
But
le faire
that's
un peu
because we don't
Mais
really
c'est toutes les
announce. The
sociétés
canton
locales
doesn't speak a lot.
qui font rayonner tout cet
But it's
écosystème.
local
Donc,
businesses
merci
that
à tout le
help
monde et je
this
vais laisser la
ecosystem
place
shine.
à
Thank you
Sedat.
all, and I will give the floor now to Sedat.
Merci pour cette invitation.
Thank you for
Merci
this invitation. Thank you
de dédier un
to
moment
the
pour,
Bitcoin paradigm
me laisser la
for
parole,
giving me the
partager avec
floor and
vous,
giving me some time
ce
to
que
share
nous
with you
allons faire.
what we are
Mais avant ça,
about
je
to do.
fais une petite introduction
But
sur
beforehand, a short introduction
moi et
about
l'entreprise.
me and
Je
about
m'appelle Sedat
the
Adiyaman.
company. My
Je
name
suis
is Sedat
fondateur de
Adiyaman. I'm the
Coworking
founder of
Neuchâtel et
Coworking
de la
Neuchâtel
société de conseil
and of the
Think to Make,
counseling
qui fait
company
du conseil en
Think to
innovation.
Make, which
Et j'ai
provides
créé en
consultant
2014
services in
cette
innovation.
société.
In 2014, I created
Donc,
those two
2014, ça
companies.
vous dit quelque chose par rapport à la présentation de
2014
Nicolas. Donc, c'est un
might
peu
ring a
dans la même
bell
période où les
following
sociétés arrivaient.
Nicolas' presentation. This is the time when businesses started arriving in
Je
the
fais pas tout de
city.
suite le lien avec
I
l'écosystème,
will not
mais,
draw an
quand on
immediate
a créé
link
l'espace
with
de
the
coworking, on a eu les
ecosystem,
premières
but when we
sociétés qui se
created
sont
the first
installées.
ecosystem,
On
they are the
a
first companies who started
développé ce
setting
projet de
up. We
manière plus
developed
organique,
this
donc avec les
project in
coworkers.
an
Donc,
organic way
l'espace de
with
coworking, c'est un
co-workers.
espace de
The
travail.
co-working space is a
On trouve
workspace
des télétravailleurs,
where you can
des
find
entrepreneurs, des
remote
indépendants.
workers,
Je faisais partie de
business
ces personnes-là. Aujourd'hui,
owners,
je le gère, mais je
independent
suis
workers. I was one
coworker
of
de
those.
l'espace.
I managed the
Et
space, but
aujourd'hui,
I'm
donc, ça
also
fait à peu
a
près une
co-worker.
centaine de personnes
And
qui viennent travailler
today,
dans
there
nos
are about
espaces. On a
100
deux
people who
espaces,
come and work in
à
our
La Chaux-de-Fonds
spaces. We
ici, à
have
200
one
mètres,
space
ça vous
here in La
intéresse, je peux
Chaux-de-Fonds,
visiter tout à l'heure vers midi.
about 2 meters
Et
away
un
from
à
here. If
Neuchâtel.
you're
Au
interested, I
total, ça
can
fait
show you
environ 800
around.
mètres carrés
And
d'espace sur plusieurs
one in
étages.
Neuchâtel, that's about
C'est un
800
gros projet qui
square
s'est
meters.
développé
That's a
depuis
lot.
2014.
That's a big project
Et
that started
c'était pas du
in
tout volontaire.
2014. But
À
it
la base,
wasn't
c'était de
necessarily,
résoudre
it
un
wasn't
problème.
uh,
Le premier, c'était de
voluntary
trouver un espace de travail
at
pour
all.
des gens
Initially,
comme
we
moi,
wanted to
c'est-à-dire
find
des
a
entrepreneurs,
workspace
des
for
indépendants.
people like me,
Et deux, créer un écosystème,
business
un environnement dans
owners,
lequel on peut échanger.
people like me, and
Nous ne
create
sommes
an
pas une
environment
agence immobilière.
where we
On est
could
là pour
exchange. We
créer
are
et
not a
nourrir,
real
en
estate
fait, ce
company.
réseau
We're here to
de personnes qui sont
support this
passionnées et
network of
passionnantes
passionate
par rapport
and
à ce
fascinating
qu'elles font.
people.
Et à un moment donné, je me suis
At some
retrouvé
point,
avec
I
une personne,
found myself
Harry
with
Alpin
a
de
person
Nîmes, qui
called
est venu
Harry
me
Alpin
rendre
from
visite.
Nîmes who
Un
visited
personnage.
me, kind
On
of
a
a
commencé à
strong
discuter de
character,
tout,
and we
sauf de Nîmes et de coworking.
started discussing
On a parlé de
about
guerre, on a parlé
everything
de
except
PKK,
from
on a
Nîmes
parlé
and
de
co-working. We called about war, the
Donc, je suis
PKK,
kurde
about
d'origine,
Kurdistan.
mon père
I'm
était
originally
PKK, donc on avait des
Kurd.
liens comme ça.
My dad
qui
is
faisait qu'on
active
a
in the
commencé à
PKK,
discuter ça.
so we started discussing
Je
about all
connaissais
those
pas
topics, and I
beaucoup de
did not
choses
know
sur
much
Bitcoin et sur
about
Nîmes.
Bitcoin and
J'en avais
about
entendu
Nîmes.
parler, j'avais vu des ATM à Londres à
I
l'époque, mais
heard about it.
je me suis dit, tiens,
I
il y
heard
a-
about
il
it
y a
in
des gens
London,
avec qui
but
on
I
peut construire
thought
quelque
there
chose,
might
et
be
c'est
people
une
with
faune
whom we can do
qui
some
me
things.
parle en tout cas, et qui
This
parle
is a
à
fauna
l'écosystème
that
de l'espace de
resonates
coworking.
with me and with the co-working ecosystem.
Donc, le projet s'est développé dans nos espaces. Donc aujourd'hui, nous sommes dans le
The
bâtiment de la
project
Poste au bord du lac, dans un
developed
magnifique
in
contexte
our space. Now
sur le
we're
lac et les Alpes.
in a beautiful
Ici
building
à la Chaux-de-Fonds, dans un
on
magnifique
the
local aussi.
shores of the lake in
Et
Neuchâtel. here we also have beautiful premises, and companies, businesses started arriving mainly through the Department of the Economy, and when they arrived, we also created a link with the NECO, so the Department of the Economy, saying, what you're doing is interesting, but I'm not an expert, so we would refer them to the NECO, and this dynamic started taking shape. And then, at some point, we thought, how about we created a dedicated environment for this ecosystem? What if we created this CBN, so the Bitcoin co-working space for Bitcoiners and blockchain space for the others? So this is an ambitious project, and at the end of my presentation, I will show you some pictures. This is a project that grew slowly. There were highs and lows, many lows, some highs, and we realized it wasn't very easy to develop what we're doing. When you're a young business like my company, and when you discuss with real estate developers, and if you tell them that you want to create a Bitcoin co-working or blockchain co-working space, that can lead to closed doors. It happened. So we had to deploy many efforts to work with people who were open to this ecosystem. Even though what we're doing is simple, we want nomadic, we want spaces, office spaces, meeting spaces, to businesses. This is something that is not very different from any other type of facility. So today I can say that the space was approved. If you go to Neuchâtel, you will see a huge building in renovation on the Rue Saint-Honoré. And the whole building is fully covered. It's a 7th floor building. It will be in Rue Saint-Honoré 10, and it will be dedicated to the blockchain ecosystem, but also open to other technologies, be it AI or other technologies once they are mainstream. This is also a wish of the canton to position itself on those technologies to create a link with the industry.
Donc, on intégrera environ une trentaine de sociétés.
We will have about 30 companies, but towards the end of the project, it should be about 70 companies. We have a 7-story building. And the goal of this project, like I said, to offer flexible workspaces. Is there anyone who doesn't know co-working spaces? Anyone who doesn't know about co-working spaces? Raise your hand. So I don't need to explain to you what this is. So there are the basic aspects of co-working spaces, but there's also an animation aspect. So we want to popularize technology knowledge, but we also want to use demonstrations. We want to show people what is there, what you can do with those spaces, and how you can bring in other people who do not know about this theme, who have never heard about it. I will not dwell on all those details. So the goal is to position the blockchain and industrial companies within this dynamic. As to our values, I don't necessarily need to explain them, but maybe what's specific about us compared with other co-working spaces. We're not a real estate company, so when people come to us, we want to see people, we want to discuss with people. We're not just here to sign contracts, even though there were many projects like that with people saying, I need a professional domicile for my company, and we tend to refuse. We tell people we want to meet up with you because it's not just about the contract, it's also about the personal relation, the person we will be interacting with as part of this project. Some people have been saying things. The head of the department, so the head of Nicolas, who is Alain Ribaud, talked about the willingness of the canton and what the canton wants to do, and 2 co-workers, Lionel, including Lionel and David. So the NIM company will be here.
Nicolas, pardon, de Lionel, peut-être de Nicolas aussi, on ne sait pas, de Lionel, calme aussi.
We will also
Donc voilà
hear
sur la
about the
partie
activities
image.
of Lionel.
On va voir si ça marche. Vous voyez la petite lumière rouge?
Now for images, do you see the little red light?
Ok, donc ce qui est intéressant dans cette image,
Okay,
c'est un
so
vieux
what's
projet,
interesting
donc,
here,
l'initiative a démarré en
it's an old
2019,
project.
donc les premières
The
discussions
initiative
ont eu lieu en 2019.
started in
Vous
2019.
voyez là, le temps qu'il a fallu pour faire maturer le projet.
So
Et ce qui
you
m'intéresse
see how
dans
long
cette
it took
image,
for the
c'est que,
project
on
to come to
a
fruition.
deux entrées, donc côté Saint-Honoré et
You
Saint-Maurice. Donc, on est
have
dans la zone
two
piétonne du
entries
centre-ville
on
de
the
Neuchâtel,
Saint-Honoré
comme je
and
l'ai
Saint-Maurice side.
où,
It's in the pedestrian area. I mean, Neuchâtel is a beautiful city. In case you haven't been there, you should.
Donc,
And
là aussi, on est dans cette mentalité de vouloir embarquer les gens
there is that opening.
facilement en fait. Donc, on n'est pas dans une
We
forme de
have
petite voie où les gens n'ont pas
the
accès.
idea that
Et c'est ce qui
we
m'intéresse avec ce
want
projet.
people to
Et
really have
ce qui est
easy
intéressant,
access.
c'est
We
que,
don't
bah,
want
il y
to
a
be
une
seen as
possibilité
being
de
all up in
développer
our
jusqu'à
tower,
6 étages.
disconnected.
Donc, avec le sous-sol, ça fait 7. Et
There's
donc, on se concentre
6
au
floors, and
premier
then with the
niveau,
underground,
premier,
that's
donc,
7.
le sous-sol, ré, premier, deuxième. Ça fait 4 étages, ça fait à
And
peu près 500 mètres carrés.
You
C'est un
have
partenaire
500 meters for the
qui
first
ouvrira
4
donc le 1er
floors.
mai 2025. Donc ça, c'est pas
That
l'ouverture,
will
c'est plutôt
be the
l'inauguration.
first phase. It will be inaugurated
nos espaces de
in May
coworking le 1er mai.
2025, and
Et c'est un jour férié à Neuchâtel.
we're inaugurating the
Souvent, on le fait
co-working
le 30
space
avril,
on
comme ça,
the
on peut faire la noce.
8th of May because that's Labor Day and it's a bank holiday.
Donc l'ouverture aura lieu, donc
The 1st of
l'inauguration
May.
aura lieu le 1er mai, mais l'ouverture aura lieu sûrement
Or maybe we can do it the
janvier,
night before. That way we
l'année
can rest the 1st of
selon
May.
les infos des architectes.
But we're still reliant on what architects tell us
Je rentre
for
dans le détail
a
de
final
l'immeuble.
dates.
Donc là, on
I'm
est
gonna
dans
look
dur,
more
on est
closely
vraiment
at the building.
dans des choses visibles.
We're really
Donc,
looking at the
je
weeds
disais,
now.
la partie salle de
What's
conférence,
visible?
qui sera une grande salle de conférence qui peut accueillir à peu près une
There's
soixantaine de personnes
a
au
big
sous-sol.
conference room for up to
Évidemment,
60
avec
people
des
in the
douches et des zones de
basement.
stockage.
There's
Le rez avec l'accessibilité
showers
des
and
deux
storage
rues,
areas,
avec la volonté,
a
donc il y a
ground
rien
floor
aujourd'hui qui
with
est,
access to those
fixe sur
two
le rez-de-chaussée.
streets.
C'est
Nothing
pour ça que
has
le
been
projet
fixed for
fait
the
pas de
ground floor
communication,
yet.
disons,
We're
grand
not
public.
communicating to the public at large these days.
Mais, on n'est pas
You
encore
have
figé.
the exclusivity
C'est
of
aussi
this
la raison où on
information.
veut pas
Know
des
that
choses pour le-
nothing
pour le
has been
rez-de-chaussée qui ne sont pas
definitively
encore
established
concrètes.
for
Nos volontés, en tout cas,
the ground
c'est de
floor,
mettre
but
un
our
desk d'accueil
idea is
où
to have
on puisse
a
accueillir
welcome
les
desk.
visiteurs qui ont
We want to
rendez-vous avec
welcome
les sociétés.
visitors who
Une salle
have
d'attente,
appointments with the
une
companies.
zone
We
d'exposition.
want a waiting
Ça
room,
s'appelait un musée
a
Bitcoin.
display
Un petit musée
room,
du
to
Bitcoin,
have a sort
une
of a
petite exposition
small
muséale, parce que
Bitcoin
quand j'ai parlé à des
museum
gens
or
métiers,
a
musée, ils m'ont dit,
museum
oulala,
type
les
exhibit.
dimensions ne jouent absolument pas.
When
Ça,
I
c'est une
spoke
exposition
to
muséale.
some
On a
about
déjà
it, they
récupéré
did
du
say that
matériel,
the
des discussions en cours
area
avec
wasn't big
l'école,
enough, so it could be more a small
traiter
exhibit
des
than
matériels
a museum per
Une
se.
volonté de faire un café. Donc
We
je-
also want to have
coffee shop.
a
Je dis café parce que ça crée
Café.
une confusion avec certaines personnes.
I've stopped saying
Un café.
coffee shop because
Donc, avec une
that
petite,
is
terrasse,
ambiguous.
donc ouvert
So we'll have a cafe
au rez-de-chaussée.
with a small terrace
Dans
open
les
to the
premiers
public
étages, on
on the
aura
ground
3
floor.
espaces de bureaux privatifs, une salle de réunion, des cabines de réunion.
At the
Ensuite,
first
également,
floor,
3
you'll have
espaces
3
bureaux,
private
postes nomades,
offices,
cafétéria
a
pour les coworkers,
meeting room,
ainsi de suite,
2
jusqu'au 6e étage. Donc
meeting
on parle au total à peu près
small
de
rooms
1200 mètres carrés
available.
C'est pour
And
vous,
then on the other
moi,
floors,
c'est doubler les surfaces
more of
de la-
those
de mon entreprise.
offices.
Donc,
you
je
have
suis dans la zone, je sais plus lequel.
1,200 meters square.
Donc ça c'est un exemple des plans, pour ceux qui arrivent à lire les plans. Donc ça c'est les cages d'escalier depuis le rez-de-chaussée.
This is an example of
Vous allez avoir des bureaux
a blueprint.
privatifs,
those who can,
principalement,
understand
un
them.
salon, des cabines de réunion,
You have
des WC, et une
private
salle de-
offices,
une grande salle de
meeting
conférence
offices,
aussi.
then
Et pour
lavatories.
clôturer un peu, ça donne c'est un peu plus concret, c'est un rang, donc un
And this is a more tangible,
image
visual.
construite par
aid.
le bureau d'architectes.
It's not actually
montrer à
been
quoi
made yet. It's the
ressemblerait
architect
les-
firm that showed us what the place could
le concept.
look like
Donc, on
in
a-
terms of
on a un
concept.
lieu plutôt assez joli.
So we'll have a rather aesthetic looking place with rounded shapes. So we have the staircase in the middle of the building, and everything is those- the staircase opens to
Vous en pensez quoi?
the rest of the floor on each floor. What do you think?
Pour les personnes intéressées et qui souhaitent avoir plus
For those who
d'informations,
are
en tout cas,
interested
des
and who
informations
want
en lien
more
avec cette
information,
présentation,
about
pouvez aller sur
the
la
presentation,
QR
or
code,
who just
donc
want
sur la
more
page
detail,
coworking-neuchâtel.ch.
you
Il y a
can
une page
go
qui s'appelle
to
maintenant Coworking Bitcoin, je crois.
the website. I think there's a tab now that says Coworking Bitcoin. So maybe test this QR code and tell me whether or not it works. Or you could also speak to Françoise Sauzer. She's in the room. She's at the back of the room, and you can speak to her at the lunchtime break, or you can contact me. You have our coordinates there, our contact details. And maybe I haven't answered all of your questions, so really feel free. Can't wait to speak more about this with you.
Est-ce que ça fonctionne? Oui. Bonjour tout le monde.
Is this working?
Lionel, je fais les présentations.
Right, so I'll take over from here.
Moi, je ne suis pas Grégoire Barbet.
I'll introduce speakers. I'm not Grégoire Barbet. Some of you might have come to see him moderate the roundtable. Don't worry, he's doing well. Well, he has been under the weather, so we're just letting him recover. I am his director, Aline Bassin, and in the best businesses, as you may know, it's the higher-ups that always sacrifice themselves. So that's what I did. I might not be as much of an expert on it as Grégoire, but I did see the beginning of it when I was at RTS, but now I work at Le Temps. But let's speak about you guys. Sedat, I think everyone by now can see who you are.
Une petite question parce que je me suis un peu en vitesse, j'ai bien préparé.
I just have a brief question. I heard that sometimes you come in a costume in the co-working space. That's fake news. Okay, well, that's on your website. No, actually, that's true. I do sometimes wear a costume.
Aujourd'hui, j'essaie déjà de m'habiller et venir au travail, c'est déjà un challenge.
These days, I'm just trying to wear clothes, period. That's already enough of a challenge.
Donc, il y a deux dates clés dans notre...
There's two big dates for us. We're both a company and an association. And the associative part is that members of the association organize Christmas dinners and Labor Day dinners. And very often there are costume events. So I have my favorites. I dress as a red Power Ranger. Or more recently, I dressed up as, I think, Superman. Very often I'm wearing pantyhose, tight pants anyway. Well, that sounds festive. That's certainly enticing. We'd like to see how it's like in that Bitcoin space. Now, Nicolas, I think you're... Alexis. Alexis Roussel, you were mentioned, but let's be more specific. You were a pioneer of the ecosystem. You and I know each other well. Often we speak of Bitcoin mining and our vision for the digital era with cryptocurrencies as currency. What was your first contact with Bitcoin? Well, for me, it was reading the white paper on the mailing list of cypherpunk networks. I was looking for a payment means, a peer-to-peer payment means, before others. But it took me a long time. I only did my first transaction in 2013. We're looking at what you've done. You founded BT business in cryptocurrencies. You were a member of the board, and then you joined NIM. I know not everyone here is familiar with all things Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So what does NIM do? Well, in the world of cryptocurrencies, NIM is already a second-generation player. We develop software to protect privacy. So we act a little bit like a VPN. You might have received an invitation to try a VPN built on NIM. The idea is to protect your privacy. The infrastructure NIM relies on is a collaborative infrastructure. It's made up of operators who coordinate around the world. A token is used to organize a whole economy. So we can develop services that need millions of servers. There's millions of servers running. And we encourage people to pool those IT resources and create services that go straight to the global scale. So we're creating an infrastructure to protect privacy, building on blockchain. Digital integrity is very important to all of us. Well, it's all about autonomy. I came to Bitcoin because I was looking for a free means of exchange for payment without having to give a Visa or some other company my identity. And I want to be able to pay someone else around the globe. And it's Bitcoin that helped me think this right to digital privacy, and I wrote this book that's going to be published. It's about being autonomous and controlling your digital identity. And this was under the aegis too of Grégoire Barbet. So we've really come full circle. I know we could talk and talk, but I'm trying to organize this so that everyone can speak. So Nicolas, by now, I think we all know who you are. I'm turning to Lionel. How did you come to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies? Because you have a completely different profile. Right, yes. Well, I was also looking for an online free means of payment. I'm a historian. I have a publishing house. I publish literature. I wasn't the most typical profile of Bitcoiner. Profiles are becoming more and more diverse anyway these days. But I really came to it because of the free software angle. Because there's a lot of things around Bitcoin. And the free software angle is what interests me. I'm a book specialist. You're a historian too, historian of the Jeannerat area. And there's a love of liberty that comes with that. That's true, and I did do a talk on that topic. Unfortunately, the audio was suboptimal. But there's a lot to say about that freedom mindset we have in the Jeannerat area. We have this decentralized organization. We don't really have a chief. There's an autonomy. Well, this is a great segue. Great segue for Nicolas. Thank you for your presentation because it really helped us understand the ecosystem. Not everyone here is from Neuchâtel, but it helps us understand how it's all unified. How do you develop an economic ecosystem? How long it takes? How to get people to believe in it? You really helped us see that.
Non, parce que j'habitais déjà à Neuchâtel, en fait.
Voilà.
And how did you, Lionel, come to that ecosystem? Well, I was already living here. In 2013, I didn't know Alexis yet.
Le monde des bitcoiners était pas aussi.
The world of Bitcoiners wasn't as vast as what we have today.
Et en fait, je découvre en 2017.
In 2017,
Seul dans ma chambre.
I found out that it wasn't just me on my own.
Les meilleurs conseillers juridiques, ils étaient en bas de chez moi.
I realized that I had the best legal experts right at my doorstep. I was already very active on the internet with French-speaking publics. And I'm very proactive. I don't develop, but I do like to organize events and that sort of thing. Participating in that ecosystem was first and foremost something I did because I like it. It helps me meet interesting people. And it's a way also to get protection, to make sure that we have policies that are mindful of our concerns. I'm going to ask the question, who's really active in the blockchain field or Bitcoin? So we really have a mixed public here. And I suggest later we open the floor to the public anyway. Briefly, without going too much into it, I think Nicolas already mentioned this, on the expansion of cryptocurrencies. I wonder about the technology and the philosophy. You mentioned that when we don't understand something, we get to that fear zone. Anything that's new gives rise to misuse. How long did it take you, Lionel, to understand how it works? Like me, you're not a geek by training. Well, when we understood what Bitcoin was about, we kept learning about it. It's like this thread you're pulling on, and you'll keep pulling until there's no sweatshirt left. Whether you're coming from literature or another field, there's many angles to look at Bitcoin from.
Le comprendre ou trouver différentes manières de le voir.
There's different ways to grasp it, to understand it. It could be philosophical, technical, industrial, political. It's a sure thing. Bitcoin is political. I've been learning since 2013. It takes a long time, and I'm still not done learning. Nicolas, understanding the technology takes time. When I'm looking things up, I'm asking ChatGPT, but I'm not really looking at the energy and a lot of things behind it. Will we get to a place where everyone has learned? Well, it's like other things, right? Everyone uses cars today, but do we all understand it? It's a little bit like witchcraft. We just turn on the button and it works. I think we're a generation that's going to build things. We're going to set up instruments, but the understanding, like Lionel said, there's the technical understanding, but then there's the philosophical aspect, and it is a disruption. When you tell the woman in the streets that she should create a wallet and that if she loses the key, that's an issue, well, there's a lot to be done there to teach people. Right, so we're coming back to the ecosystem and we're staying with Nicolas. You showed us that the binding agent was formed with all these different actors. And some played a leading role in that ecosystem.
De bienveillance et d'intérêt à vraiment faire continuer à développer cet écosystème du coup.
There's also the role of the cantonal bank, but do we still have as much do we still have this spirit of well-meaning? And I know it's a tricky question coming from the representative of the service of the economy of the canton. Well, what we're seeing is we have the watchmaking industry, the biggest industry here. It doesn't need much help. Well, I mean the biggest industrials anyway. We saw other startups, so we know there's those other aspects. But setting up your crypto company, thanks to all this, has come out of being a taboo. It's become normal. To what extent do you think that's going to expand? Since I've been brainstorming the moderation of this roundtable yesterday, I've been thinking that this is a digital company where everything is decentralized, where payment flows are done through blockchain, so it's huge. How do you think that ecosystem is going to grow? Well, we're often making the link with internet. At the beginning, you had modems, you had those beep beeps, you'd pick up the phone and it would hang up, you had all these little snags. And if you look at the take-up curve of Bitcoin today, you see that there's still a long way to go. There's also geopolitical considerations. It's not used the same way everywhere in the world. I think it's a continental war. When you have the US on the one hand trying to seize control of some things, and the EU on the other hand trying to regulate but losing time. Remember, the EU lost internet because they said that with Minitel we didn't need internet, and that's why the main controlling powers of the internet are not in Europe today. Then you have China. What can we do about how China is using it to control its population? It's like the atom. You could use it to create energy or to make bombs. Right, it's difficult, isn't it, to see how things are going to evolve, because also the two modes can coexist. You could have microcurrencies. You do have microcurrencies. And you could see traditional modes of payment coexist with these alternative methods. In Neuchâtel, I'd say we think of ourselves as great servants. We're not with an individual personal mindset compared to other regions. When you have the individual mindset, you don't have cohesion because everyone's trying to be the best, but that's not the way we do things here. Moderator, yes. I'm going to give the floor to Sedat soon because you're the facilitator, as you say, almost despite yourself. You're doing that binding element to have a shared approach. But Alexis, you have the inside and the outside. Why did you choose Neuchâtel 10 years ago? You don't come from here. We can hear it in your accent. Alexis, well, I come from Geneva. In Geneva, we started with meetups. We had the first meetups there. Some of you in the room will remember the first ones in 2013 that happened in Geneva. One person initiated it. They've left since. They were co-founder, and I joined in September 2013.
Pendant en fait quelques années, ça s'est développé à Genève. Et ensuite,
This evolved over a few years in Geneva, and then in 2014,
mon cofondateur Jeanne, qui lui était neuchâtelois, il a dit mais
Jeanne was my co-founder, and he came from Neuchâtel. He told me he knew a fiduciary expert and a lawyer there, and he told me Neuchâtel would be a simpler space because it's smaller, so we moved the company there. I'd started having talks with institutions in Geneva in the kind of financial space that you have in Geneva. When you try to work on Bitcoin in 2013, you're nobody, you're a glitch in the system. There was zero opening when you were talking to people outside of that small group of Bitcoiners. But we found that in Neuchâtel. The ability to talk to people from different sectors. And I think that's inherited from the Neuchâtel culture that says startups should get a chance. We should let small businesses develop, especially if they work in microtechnique. Whether it's in finance or IT, the person we talked to didn't need to understand straight away what Bitcoin was. They just applied the Neuchâtel method. And in Geneva, up till today, you see it. Whenever I say this, and there's people from Geneva listening to me, they're a bit ticked off with me, but I'm saying it because I still see that. In Geneva, you have that mindset that you have in the rest of the world. But Neuchâtel did take it in stride. The mindset in Neuchâtel saw cryptocurrencies as needing Bitcoin at its heart, which wasn't the case in Geneva. And a lot of public funding was used. For example, to help structure the Coworking Bitcoin Neuchâtel space. And this was possible because they saw that Bitcoin was central to cryptocurrencies. And without necessarily understanding Bitcoin, they understood that Bitcoin needed the room to grow. The moderator, I know you travel a lot, you participate in panels. Are there other places in the world, I'm thinking of El Salvador, that's taken up Bitcoin? Are there places, countries that are very similar to Neuchâtel in that regard? Alexis, well, what I've observed is when you have people brave enough to push this locally, then it does develop according to the local context, which creates varied ecosystems. We don't have many, but they are varied. So you have Neuchâtel, you have another one in Lugano. In Lugano, it's really developing under the aegis of one company. And Lugano has about 400 traders that accept Bitcoin. It's not the case in Neuchâtel yet.
On n'avait pas une grosse entreprise qui vaut
No,
des
because
milliards,
we did not have that very valuable company, worth billions that's
ils ont poussé le paiement en Bitcoin.
pushed for this. But they did push for it, for payment in Bitcoin and in Tether in Lugano. El Salvador is different. You've been there. There, it's purely Bitcoin. There's really Bitcoin purism in El Salvador. And it started with a small village, a beach, where one person set up shop, and you had a combination of political situation, of the need for solutions. The president was young, open to new ideas, and he recognized that there were these young people with innovative mindsets. His country, it should be said, had a really high crime rate back then, but he recognized the need to empower those young people and their ideas. And then there's other examples, like in Congo, you have a small community there, Kivé-Clair. They have mining activities in the region. What's really interesting there is that they're training for everyday maintenance, for example, how to repair a machine, how to do transactions with telephones. And now you have a lot of technically proficient people, people with mechanical and technical knowledge who can help miners. But it's still difficult in Congo because it's a war zone.
And I can take examples such as Berlin. When you are in cryptocurrency, Berlin is a very active hub, but Germany couldn't really create that link with the financial world. So companies in Berlin established themselves in beautiful areas with a lot of blockchain developers, but it's still research, development, and there are no real financial companies setting up there, so there's a piece missing. Nicolas, you wanted to say something, and I also wanted to ask you a question. What's missing right now as an accelerator to go further? Because there is a kind of a nugget for the sector, but there is no President or Alaribo coming there and saying, let's adopt Bitcoin for all transactions in Neuchâtel. Well, he didn't buy them early enough. It's true that we've been working a lot in nodes. We talk about validation nodes in Bitcoin, but we talked about Neuchâtel in Geneva. There are very competent people who have to fight to achieve the things that we managed to do more easily. But there are also actors who've been with us since the beginning and today who are carrying out initiatives in the Canton of Jeannerat, in Biel, maybe near Lausanne as well, and let's not forget about them. We were on a terrain that was fertile, that allowed us to do something. But around us there are also people who are working hard, or working the land to have some results, and that's what's good. Being right alone, it's difficult, but when you start trying to make things change, everyone with their own capabilities, then you build a network of people who know each other, who can exchange with each other. With someone saying, we're doing this in the Jura. Maybe if this works for you, maybe this will give ideas to other in the cantons who will try to do the same thing. So there's a bit of an emulation effect. We're trying to work in this way, and maybe there's a bit of a lack of geeks on the side of the state. It's difficult for people to step out of their comfort zone and to try and learn something new. It's easy to go home, put on Netflix, order some food and just chill. But I'm someone who constantly receives information. I saw something about the NIM VPN. I want to see how it works. But it's not just on the level of the state. The state is very liberal. But of course, I believe that you stand out in a very positive way in the area of civil servants. But Lionel, I imagine that you didn't, Alexis rather, you didn't wait for the administration to support you. Well, it's true that it was always the fight of Bitcoiners, and we can see it in the places where it doesn't work well. It was always about saying, just treat us the same way as you treat everyone else. We're not asking for more. We do not ask for an Alain Ribot saying that the currency in Neuchâtel is now Bitcoin. This is not what we're asking for, but we just want to have a bank account, we just want to have insurance. We also had to work at the judicial level in the canton. It wasn't easy because the very first judicial cases ended with judges saying, I cannot work on this because it's about cryptocurrency. So they just let the cases down. So I believe that now there's still a bit of an issue with the BCN, but that's the luxury that we have here. In Neuchâtel, we are able to access regular services just like anyone else. And I just wanted to give an example of how this adoption is taking place in Neuchâtel. Amongst the actors that he mentioned, there were strategic actors, I don't remember how you called them, lawyers, fiduciaries, etc. Those are interesting. Taking the example of fiduciaries, we've worked a lot with some fiduciary companies that have been with us since 2014 to create Bitcoin accounts, to find solutions for us Bitcoin companies, to see how we can manage our taxes. And they supported us in the creation of new businesses with in-kind contributions, with cryptocurrencies. And what we can see is that those people who are not convinced work with the industry and then start to see that there's a client outside of the area that has a problem that can be solved with our solutions. We are currently reducing the speed to accelerate rather the creation of companies in Neuchâtel. Usually you need projects to send them to the commercial registers, but the in-kind contribution can be done in just 2 days with the help of the notary, the accountant, and that saves about 2 weeks of waiting for the product to be validated by the bank. This is a very concrete example of an innovation. It doesn't look like an innovation from the outside. It's quite simple, but today it's possible to create a business more quickly in Neuchâtel, more quickly than in 5 years ago, thanks to this ecosystem. We are on the last mile for the legislative elections in France. I've seen the speaking time this week between Bardella, Gabriel Attal, and the representative of the left-wing parties, not because it's a bad person, but because this person is less well-known. So Lionel and Sedat have spoken less. Lionel, maybe you wanted to say something. Otherwise, I do have a question for you. You're an actor of the ecosystem. Why are you in Neuchâtel and not elsewhere? Do you have specific claims, needs? How do you believe your company, how would you like your company to evolve? I have benefited from direct financial support from the canton. Does everyone know what Lionel is doing in his bookshop? It's a publishing house. So we developed, well, actually we received support from the canton to organize the Bitcoin paradigm. NPR being a new regional policy, an RP. Why Neuchâtel? Well, because I live in Neuchâtel, and also this is a place where I feel safe. There are often Bitcoiners arriving and coming to Neuchâtel because they're looking for a place where they will feel good.
Je pense qu'il y a le monde attire le monde, c'est-à-dire que
And
quand on doit quitter son pays,
people attract people. When you have to leave your country to
assurer la survie
create a business, to
ton activité,
make sure that your
tu vas à un endroit, si
activity can be sustainable, if you know that there's a place where every week you can go to a beer-to-beer session, a beer-to-beer meeting,
au beer to beer, et
this
puis,
helps.
moi je pense que à Neuchâtel, et surtout quand il y aura le centre,
And
ça
I
va
think
être
that
très
in
bien.
Neuchâtel, and especially
J'ai
with
aussi
the
cette
center,
impression que ça
the-
essaime,
I believe that there's a lot happening also around Neuchâtel. We talked about the canton of Jeannerat. We have met people from the Service for the Promotion of the Economy who are looking at what's happening or what's happened in Neuchâtel in order to see if the Jeannerat can emulate this. With Biel, there's also some dynamism. Soon it will no longer be a watchmaking area, but a crypto watchmaking area. I know that this could be a whole round table, so we won't have the whole debate, but maybe you will have to invite me for the debate next year. How central is Bitcoin to you? For you, is it Bitcoin or not, or nothing?
on a une approche.
Well, actually,
Vous êtes ici à LeParadigmeBitcoin.
you are at the Bitcoin Paradigm Conference, but if you look at the sponsors,
Il n'y a que des sociétés locales
those are only
mais qui
local
font pas forcément
companies,
Bitcoin.
but that don't necessarily focus on
Ce qui
Bitcoin.
caractérise notre vision de
What
Bitcoin dans cet écosystème,
characterizes our vision in this ecosystem is not that it's Bitcoin only, it's just that it's Bitcoin first.
ce qui est important,
Meaning
quand les
that
gens, ils arrivent,
what is
et
important
puis qu'ils ont
when
des
people
entrepreneurs qui
arrive,
arrivent,
because
qui
sometimes
arrivent, ah,
there are
j'ai
business
révolutionné
owners
la blockchain,
arriving to the beer-to-beer session
on
saying,
pose d'abord des questions
I will
sur,
revolutionize
qu'est-ce
the
qu'ils pensent de
the blockchain. First, I ask them what they think about
Ça permet
Bitcoin. Do they know how it works? And this helps
la qualité des gens. Alors,
seeing
pas que,
or
c'est pas une question de
assessing
motivation, c'est une question technique. Bitcoin
people's technical skills. Bitcoin is a bit of a signal. This is something that we really see in the ecosystem. If I organize an event
où on parle
called the Bitcoin Paradigm,
que de Bitcoin,
where
pas,
we almost exclusively talk about Bitcoin and not about other cryptocurrencies or the blockchain, it's because people have to understand Bitcoin first.
pas focaliser uniquement sur
Then
Bitcoin,
we
parce qu'en
don't
fait,
only focus on
il y a des
Bitcoin,
logiciels libres,
because this is also related to free software, to cryptography.
enfin, jeudi,
On Thursday,
ici,
we
dans le théâtre Privacy Reunion,
hosted the privacy reunion.
chiffrer
That's people whose specialty is to work on encryption, to
ils ont plein de solutions.
become anonymous on the internet, to protect their data privacy.
La cryptographie,
There are many solutions that are related to cryptography
nécessaire qui va
that do not require blockchain. This is something that is needed,
va profiter aussi à
and the
Bitcoin.
evolution of cryptography will also bring benefits
C'est,
to
disons,
Bitcoin. But Bitcoin
c'est
is
le phare.
the leading element, the flagship element. So since we are in the global capital of watchmaking, I work all week in Geneva, but I don't tell them. But here, I keep an eye on the watch.
Sedat aussi qui doit parler.
Sedat has to speak as well, says Lionel.
N'hésite pas, tu l'avais signalé, il faut quand même que ce soit clair. Mais tu n'hésites pas à intervenir et
Of course, feel free to take the floor, and I have a very important question for you at the end. We had a discussion when we prepared the round table. You have a central role. I mentioned the word facilitator, but I suggest that we go up to 15:15 with the discussion, and then we open the discussion, and those who want to leave can leave, those who want to stay can stay. Let's talk about the cantonal bank, the BCN. What happened with the BCN? I do not know if it's clear to everyone. So suddenly the BCN said we're scared.
Là, on n'a pas complètement confiance, on va plus
We are not really
services bancaires
confident.
aux acteurs de la crypto-monnaie. C'est bien
We
juste.
won't be able to offer our support to all sectors of cryptocurrencies. That's more or less what happened, but I will make a short introduction about what is happening at the level of the state. We are looking for this boom with the support of Nicolas Vradis. We organized 3 sessions with about 50 people working within the state with a training on crypto assets, including for the police and for people from the prosecution services in order to explain what can be done. And it was very interesting, and we'll probably do something like that again by the end of the year. The idea is to explain what is happening, because when we talk about cryptocurrencies, there are many people who know what cryptocurrencies are. They heard about it, they go on a platform, they buy cryptocurrencies, and then they say, I bought cryptocurrencies, this is great. But they never did any blockchain transactions. It's as if you're a specialist in race cars, you know a lot about Formula One, but you don't have your driving license. Many people hear about it, but there is no technical knowledge. And generally speaking, in the banking sector, and I know it was even a taboo in some banks, staff couldn't say that they owned Bitcoin, and there's some kind of balance in Neuchâtel between people who still do not believe in it, who tried to understand the way the crypto cycles work every 4 years, and who said, okay, let's go and see it. It's maybe for regulation-related reasons. We can also understand there is a lot of fear. I'm a bit more of a rebel. And you can indeed understand the fear when you've been looking at the area of finance for a long time. And this is not something negative. We tend to see the world through a filter because we're for Bitcoin, but at the level of the state, there were many ideas, things that we wanted to put in place, and there was the COVID-19 pandemic, and the digitalization department had other fish to fry because there was a lot to do with schools. And for a bank and for other organizations, there are many other daily issues to tackle. The fall of Credit Suisse, for instance, and this led to a lot of tension within banks. Banks are not comfortable. It's Paolo in Lugano, right, the person in charge, who said something very interesting during an event on the banking sector in Geneva, and he said it's an issue of risk-taking between 0 and 100%, maybe 3-4% of risk-taking is okay for a bank. But if you're at 0% of risk-taking, then it's very difficult. But like I said, I'm not scared with jumping out of a plane with a parachute. I know about risk-taking. I'm not scared, but maybe internally, at the level of the BCN, says the moderator, yes, they have other things to address, a lot of constraints, and maybe because there was a bit less interest and maybe less training of internal staff, maybe they did not see the cyclical nature, they didn't see that this is a quiet period, and with Bitcoin, things are starting to be all right, and at some point there was a sharp increase of volumes and internal control saying we need to regulate, we need to do a lot more oversight, this requires a lot of administrative work. So now there are efforts to try automate things, but there was, in any case, some fear, actually a lot of fear. But there was no discussion with the Canton, because the Canton should also be able to have a say. I believe the Canton has a voice within the bank. But there were discussions, but if someone comes and say there's a fire,
Situation très tendue, j'imagine.
Tendu, mais de dire voilà, il y a le feu.
it's a tense situation. What do you do then? If there's a fire, you try to put it out. So maybe
Calmer ce feu en interne,
there
etc.
would be a way
Plus de
to
discussion. Ça, c'est aussi
tame this fire internally.
culture.
It's also about the culture.
Dans l'échange,
Here, we are a lot
on échange ouvertement.
in a spirit of exchange. We speak openly, but within the banking sector, there is
On sait pas tout.
a lot of secrecy,
C'est très
a lot of compartmentalization, and it's difficult because the culture is different. And there was also Crédit Suisse.
Forcément qu'elle est surveillée par la FINMA, il y a aussi
There is oversight by the FINMA. We know that there is a toughened stance from the FINMA.
pour terminer.
Just to conclude,
Problématique.
we can understand the issue even though you do not accept what is happening.
c'est tout à fait clair. Je
I think this is very clear.
passe avant toute chose parce que sinon,
I'm giving the floor to Sedat, otherwise I will not
parce que,
sleep tonight.
le projet
And I have a very specific question. The project was really welcomed. It's very important to bring those people together and to be within the city and to really have those
avec la population,
necessary relations with the population from the outside, from the inside. So I think you know that we've been wanting to talk about this project for a long time. There is one thing that you did not mention. We know that you're very cautious because you explained that sometimes you can get a bit too excited about cryptocurrencies too quickly. What's missing for the 1st of May 2025? Is it money or is it also authorizations? What will be very important for this CBN really to
Juste, c'est le nom
appear
du code du projet, le nom du site n'est pas encore déterminé.
next year? So CBN, that's the name of the project, but the name of the site isn't
Qu'est-ce qui manque
defined yet.
pour communiquer,
So what's missing to communicate? Well, a clear vision
du rez-de-chaussée, en fait,
of
on parlait de
the
l'espace,
ground floor area,
l'espace physique, hein, on
those
parle de
physical
150 mètres
spaces.
carrés,
We
comme j'ai dit, avec
talked about
211
180
piétonnes.
square
Et aujourd'hui,
meter,
il y a des discussions en
2
cours,
entries
et
from
il y a pas
pedestrian
de
streets.
décision,
There are
et
discussions,
c'est pourtant l'endroit le plus
at the
important
moment,
du projet, parce que,
but it's the very important
dessus,
part of the project. The working spaces are quite well
Le
known.
rez-de-chaussée, vraiment l'élément
It's
important.
something
pour
that
la
people are familiar with,
la
but
démonstration,
for
l'adhésion,
popularization,
peut-être aussi
demonstration,
montrer,
buy-in, this ground floor
différentes
area
institutions,
is very important.
qu'est-ce
Also
qu'il y a,
to show
comment ça fonctionne, il y a
institutions
aussi des craintes,
what is there.
peut-être,
There are also some fears,
expliquer,
so it would be
comment,
a place to explain
comment
how
les choses fonctionnent.
things work.
Parce que moi, je fais partie des 99%
I am part
de
of the
gens
99% of people who do not
avec la blockchain.
really
Je suis
understand
dedans,
blockchain
j'apprends, je
fully.
suis
So I
curieux,
fell into this, I'm
et
curious, I'm
j'apprends,
learning,
je pose des questions stupides
and
et
I
on
ask
répond d'une
stupid
manière,
questions, and
très agréable,
I
très ouverte, et on ne juge
receive
pas.
very
Je
kind
fais la
answers.
promotion
I'm
du
not being
peer-to-peer là,
judged,
parce
so I'm
que,
promoting peer-to-peer
c'est un
sessions
bon
here
état
because
d'esprit
this is a
en
very
tant que,
good
novice
spirit.
du sujet. Et pour moi, ce qui est important
As a
pour ce
novice, this is very
rez-de-chaussée,
good
c'est que
for me.
ce
And
lieu
what's
soit
important
pour
is that
les
this
gens
ground
comme
floor
moi
area is a
sont
space
curieux,
for
mais qui
people
ne
like
sont
me
pas
who are
en train de
curious,
coder
but who are not coding,
contrôler les
who
validations
are not checking validations
sur la chaîne. Donc,
on the
voilà.
blockchain.
Et comme c'est pas validé, on peut pas
And
communiquer
since it's not validated,
publiquement.
we can't publicly talk about it. But
Alors, dans la
when it
partie
comes to
des
investors and authorizations, how does it work?
il y a un inconnu, sur
Well, in this
la manière dont va
area,
fonctionner le site.
we still don't know how the site will work. We will need to ask for additional
Mais, la problématique,
authorizations.
c'est l'infra, c'est-à-dire
But there's also an issue with infrastructure. There needs to be some
un café,
work
il faut une
arrangements
infrastructure
made. If you want to have a coffee area, you need dedicated infrastructure that are not in the building for now. So this incurs costs and there's a challenge there. We received support thanks to the NRP, the new regional policy of the canton. So the canton supports this, but there is also a personal risk.
d'engagement financier.
There's
Et on se
financial
rend compte qu'au fur et à mesure
engagement
qu'on
from me, and we
fait des
realize that
travaux
for
ou
those who
construit une maison,
have
il y a des aléas
when you build a house, there are some hazards, and it's very difficult to position ourselves here. It might be a matter of weeks, and I hope that by the end of the summer, we'll be able to have a clear position. And I will communicate about it. The 1st of May 2025 is quite an optimistic deadline, so there might be some delay, but it won't be the first or the last project to be delayed. No, for sure. I've been working on this project since 2019, so we'd like to make this more visible. There is a lot of expectation, for sure, be it from the media, from the broader public, the banking system. I received WhatsApp messages from completely unknown people. People from outside Switzerland even. And we said we really want this project to be well made. And I liked what Nicolas said. We do first and then we communicate. So we're doing now and then we will communicate when we're ready. This makes a lot of sense. We already talked about it. Alexis, you wanted to add something? And then we'll open the floor. I just wanted to add something related to the BCN, and that is also related to the CBN's ground floor area. This is something that we had to do, but we also were encouraged to think about it, which is to develop a local economy, as part of which there is no need for banks. All this ecosystem includes companies that have contracts between each other, they provide services to each other, and it's possible to pay with cryptocurrencies. This is a strength. Having an industrial ecosystem where transactions are made in cryptocurrencies mean that we can benefit from this accounting simplicity that we can gain thanks to Bitcoin. So finally, there is a good synchronicity. We talked about the synchronization of the ecosystem yesterday. And this ground floor area, what I hope as a member of the community is that it will be a place where people can take part, either as a shopkeeper in the city, either as a consumer, or as an independent worker, to really step in and experience this peer-to-peer economy where payments are direct. This is also the work of Bebop, and that's why he knows that there is one demand from the community is that everything has to be payable with Bitcoin in the ground floor area of the CBN. Otherwise, the media will just jump on this slight inconsistency. Very quickly, Nicolas. You talked about stepping up. In 200-300 years, if we want Neuchâtel to be associated with cryptocurrency and not just watchmaking. Is there any reflection on how to accelerate that? In Lugano, political support is also important to enable crypto payments. We're looking for a young billionaire who would like to come to live in the Canton. No, more seriously. Well, here again, the Canton is open. But to me, the idea is that the more there are people who start, the more there are people who experiment. There are very simple payment systems today. With Bitcoins, you can pay your beer or your absinthe with Satoshis. There are ways to do that. Some tools are being developed and are easier and easier to use for shopkeepers. So it's just a matter of time and a matter of spreading. Anyone who has a card or a wallet can go and preach with their shopkeepers. Yes, now we can also see that there's this link with religion and preaching, etc. Are there questions in the room? Feel free to raise your hand and stand up. No questions, everything is clear. I still have one question. I will take advantage of this collective intelligence. This is a code name for the project. For now, we are trying to find a name to really make this place stand out. If you have any suggestions, I'm all ears, be it now or during the break later. Well noted. You can also open a contest. The Citadel. Raise your hand if you like this idea. Do you have an idea?
Je crois qu'il validait Citadel.
I think this person was validating Citadel. So Citadel is well noted. There should have been a Slido for people to vote. I had one question to Lionel. So you're the master of ceremonies. You're the host. Maybe one question to conclude on the BCN, because this is something that made or created some discussions about the ecosystem. Maybe this affected you in your activities. Is this an issue for you?
Pas directement.
Not directly, no, because I'm not a broker. Last year, though, the bank was in partnership for us for the event. It's not the case this year. We've had a franc exchange. We'll wait for them to be ready. We haven't closed the door, but in truth, the objective of a Bitcoiner is to circumvent banks. I think we all have it in mind. We'll always need banks, but they will switch activities. What I find regrettable is that we were open to discussing that with the bank, not necessarily to revolutionize banking, but to do experiments with them, and they missed that opportunity, and that's regrettable. Maybe the Lucerne Cantonal Bank could be one. Yes, maybe try the BCG. You feel like the dialogue was broken, Lionel? No. But they weren't ready. Last question. I think the rest will happen in the lunch space, but I have a question about the service of the economy. Billionaires, big companies. To what extent there's an active policy for promotion? We haven't used that word yet. For promoting things in a way that we get more strategic, bigger actors to come in. Nicolas, well, we have a huge support from the local community. They're traveling, they're meeting people. And they're some of the best representatives of the ecosystem. They're really the Canton's business card. And then we have discussions with people who are potentially interested in setting up here. We also created a new platform, Vivre à Neuchâtel, Living in Neuchâtel. And there are many factors to take into consideration. The family, the partner of the person. It's not easy to have people move. You saw that we have a lot of great places here in La Chaux-de-Fonds, but there's it's a specific way of living. I come from Geneva. I've been here for years, and I have no desire to leave. But it is a specific place. Sedat, among the businesses that contacted us, there's not just cryptocurrencies companies. There's also industrial and watchmaking companies, and they're of no negligible size. Not the Swatch Group. Sorry, that was a joke. I know we're in La Chaux-de-Fonds. Sedat. In those talks, I was trying to understand what was their interest. There's the possibility of a co-working space for them and their teams. With COVID, things have changed. People work in satellites, in clusters. They no longer work in big, unique spaces. Swatch recently changed their policy on that. So they want to work in spots. And some of them work on things related to blockchain. And for that, they're interested in being close to that ecosystem. They want to create links, so that's positive. The moderator. Well, I know I'm not the only one who will be following closely the evolution of your project. The 1st May, I will be there to drink, I don't know, a beer, an absinthe. For those who aren't from the region, please just know I was involved in trying to gather steam around that project. Now I'll give the floor to Lionel. He'll give you technical instructions, and thank you to our panelists. Thank you.
Voilà.
To the public.
On va aller manger. Donc, il y a
we'll break for lunch.
L'apéritif et il y a
we'll have the buffet.
J'ai visité en train
and the aperitif.
La ville de La Chaux-de-Fonds, la petite animation.
Yesterday you visited the town of La Chaux-de-Fonds. What we have during the lunch break today is a small-scale absinthe maker is paying us a visit to show us how to drink it.
On reprendra les conférences vers 14h.
And panels will start again at 2 p.m.